So when should someone or a family start a family office? And what really is a family office anyway, right? Well, a family office is basically when a wealthy family or an ultra wealthy family starts focusing, on different sorts of goals, whether it's legacy planning or financial goals when it comes to investing, and it allows them to specialize, reduce taxes, do all types of things, and have common goals for that family. So, with me today, I have really an expert in this field. I have Richard Wilson, who's with the Family Office Club, doing some amazing things. Welcome, Richard. How are you today?
Great. Appreciate being here. Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. I know you guys have basically the biggest family office, group. You do over 16 live events a year. You have 3,000 family offices. This is really your world. This is kind of who you educate. And I think a lot of people are really wondering is, what is the right time to start a family office? How much wealth do I need? Or what are some of the advantages to consider about why a wealthy individual or family should do that?
Yeah, sure. So one thing that's important to know is that there's three types of family offices. You can have a virtual family office, which is a really lean, smaller organization where the costs are kept in check as a percentage of your net worth. And that could be appropriate for someone who's got 5 or 10 or 15 million of assets all the way up to a couple hundred million in assets. You then have a single family office, which is a more fully formed, multiple full-time people, but again, dedicated only to you and your family who's having their wealth managed. And that could be anywhere from typically 30 to 50 million of net worth all the way up to several billion net worth. And then you have multi-family offices, which are really wealth management firms that are focused on the ultra wealthy. So they might have, like one of my clients I work with, they have 37 clients and their average net worth is 137 million per client. So they manage $7.5 billion in assets. Or you could have a multifamily office that has 500 clients and they're all worth $10 million each. And so knowing what a virtual family office is and single family offices and multifamily offices is half the battle, because people throw the term around and if they don't really understand it, they might say, oh, we need one for sure, or we're not big enough for one, so forget that idea and don't research it further. So it's important to kind of state that up front.
Right. So it sounds like there's a broad ranges of, kind of how groups organize themselves, whether it's with other families or virtually, or just to, be able to have different advantages. Can you talk a little bit about the purpose or some of the advantages that, someone who's considering this should look at?
Sure. Yeah. One of the big advantages is that when you work with a family office solution, the whole point is to manage things more holistically. So as you become wealthier, a small mistake might cost you $100,000, and a big mistake might cost you $1 million. When you're only worth $1 million, you can make a pretty big mistake, and maybe it's a $20,000 mistake, and it's painful, but it couldn't have paid for a full-time person just to prevent you from making more of those mistakes, free you up, have you so you don't have to do the painful things in life like paperwork, regulatory filings, etc. And then you can move faster on where you do add the most value. Just like if you're the chairman of a publicly traded company, you're probably not dropping off your own dry cleaning or just doing routine, mundane errands around town. Well, for every part of your financial portfolio, tax portfolio, philanthropy, you need support as you get wealthier and wealthier. So that's the main benefit, is just holistic support to focus your energy on what you either want to do or where you add the most value.
Right. I know a lot of families. I actually have a friend who's kind of his background isn't with working with a family office. He still works there. He's an attorney and has a tax background, and just was sharing me as well some of the reasons why, to be able to specialize. And also another kind of reason people do this is to be able to have a legacy, or to be able to kind of think about, for the family. And I know I've actually think I've heard you talk about it, or you've written about it. Just how do you teach your kids if you're in a wealthy family, or how do you kind of set up financial goals when maybe not everybody's interested in that and you have some central place to do that? Can you talk a little bit about legacy and kind of how that works with a family office?
Yeah, sure. So when we start working with the family, we always make sure we document their values, their objectives, their goals first, and then they can decide where to spend the money, who to hire, what to invest in. A lot of people rush into hiring consultants before they even know themselves. So they don't even know if they're hiring the right consultant, or should they even set up an office in that location, or do they need an office at all? Or, what type of family office they even need. It could all change based on knowing their values and their goal and mission as a family. So that's super important. And then many people it doesn't matter if you're ultra wealthy or you run a business or you run your own family office, or if you're just a single business owner, hoping to become wealthy over time. I think everyone should have their values documented and in front of them, their children, their spouse, et cetera, on their kitchen wall, above your dinner table, because those are the rules you're trying to live by in order to win at the game that you've set up for yourself. And that's how you keep score. And you shouldn't let people into your circle of trust or hire people or put up with service providers that don't fit those values. And if you align everything in your life with those values that you know to be what you need to do to become really successful, based on how you define success, then that is going to allow you to remove some friction from your life and business. And so that's one of the most important things when it comes to legacy, is to pass on those values, because if you don't, then the wealth will destroy relationships within the family, and the family will destroy the wealth, and it'll just be a complete mess. And so the values passing on is more important than the wealth passing on, because without the values, it'll probably just, the wealth could go to Miami Beach condos and drugs, or, it could just get lost really quickly.
Yeah, that's really interesting you say that. I think, it's a lot of work, and I think a lot of our listeners too, it's a lot of work to clarify, values and your mission, even in your business. People talk about their business or in what they're doing, but whether, someone's a physician or they own a business, I mean, really the most important values are the ones we have at home, right? So what sort of things are we leaving to our kids? And and like you said, it's money is money, but if the values aren't there, then they're not people are not going to live by the values that you have anyway. So I think that's a really good way to look at it. Let me ask you today, kind of in the current environment with there's a lot of things changing in the economy in the world. We're doing all this money printing, and there's inflation, and there's social stuff happening, and all kinds of things. What are some of the biggest challenges facing family offices today?
I think one challenge is a blind spot that's come up during COVID of ignoring their health. I was at a event lately where I knew everyone in the room had paid $30,000 a year to be part of this investment group. And I said, raise your hand here if you've spent $30,000 on your health in the whole past 12 months. And two people out of 150 raised their hand. So I basically told them in a halfway polite way, like, well, then all of you prioritize money over your own life. And maybe it's hard to spend 30,000 on your health besides going to Whole Foods and getting the best quality food, perhaps. But a lot of people won't get a blood test to look at their 30 biomarkers and see what their internal biological age is and what they're deficient in. But they'll take their Mercedes in for a $1,200 oil change and to get things fixed on your car, which you're going to trade away or sell in 2 to 4 years on average, anyways. And so I see that as a real blind spot for a lot of families that got a light shined on it during COVID. And I think that if it's not a core value of the family to be healthy, it's just a good ROI on their money invested. Because if you care about taxes, if you care about return on your portfolio, it's going to create a mess if you die early, and you probably don't want to anyways. Even if it didn't create a mess, you're probably not looking forward to dying early. Yet people don't invest in their own body to stay healthy and be, a better person to be around and just have higher energy, et cetera. So it's something that never gets talked about in our industry. But I think with COVID, it's come to the surface, and it's always been something that's been a priority for me. But I've been bringing it up a lot more with clients, and it resonates with a lot of people that have enough money to get any type of health coaching that they could possibly think of.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a saying, and I don't remember who said this, but it's a famous quote, but the first wealth is health. And it's true. And my background is working in the medical field, in medical device surgical sales. I'd been with heart surgeons, and you just see people where this stuff was preventable, like basically they'd either be smoking or they'd just be 30, 40 pounds overweight. And then you see their arteries just look terrible, because of these things. So it's the choices we make, our habits really make us. But you're right. These people, a lot of wealthy people have resources, and yet we don't want to spend the time or the effort to go do it. And I'm also a fitness guy. I mean, I just ran 5 miles earlier today. And I think
Nice.
it's so important to do, because it affects, me living to 60 versus me living to 80 or 90, right? Maybe we can't, something crazy could happen, but if I eat well and I take care of my body, there's a much higher chance that you're going to be around longer. And I think that's really the biggest thing that we can give our kids and give our grandkids, is just being here, right? Just being healthy and being here.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And to answer the question probably the way that you meant it to be answered, I think one thing that's top of mind for a lot of investors right now is that markets are at all-time highs. Real estate, stock markets, very high. But with inflation, the informed investors expected to go higher, but also wouldn't be surprised by a pullback. And so they don't want to hold on to lots of cash because, like Ray Dalio says, like cash is trash right now, and you're losing a 1% a month. Basically, is
Yeah.
what a lot of investors think you're really losing in terms of buying power. And so finding investments that have short duration, that have debt income components to it, that give them some ability to still be nimble in case of a pullback in the markets is a real challenge for families right now because they feel dumb sitting on too much cash, but they also feel a little bit dumb buying into the market at crazy prices. So they need to come up with new strategies and go down to a more niche within a niche strategy, or maybe some sort of real estate development instead of cash flowing real estate in some cases, if it's appropriate, or some other iteration maybe on what they're doing before. And that's a little bit of a challenge for a lot of families coming to our investor club events.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's these, kind of inflationary and deflationary forces happening at the same time, right? There's all this money printing, 40% of all the currency that has been created was in the last 18 months, which is very inflationary. Asset prices are crazy, shortages of stuff. But then, if there is some sort of pullback or, some asset prices go down, there could be some sort of deflationary recession. And it's just hard to protect for all that, right? So there's ways that, trying to think through different options and having some diversification, is obviously important. So let me ask you, I don't think I asked you this before, but what do you think is kind of the minimum net worth somebody should consider starting some sort of family office structure? Or is that a hard question to answer depending on the values of a family, I guess?
Yeah, maybe at like $5 or $10 million net worth, you could start thinking about components of a virtual family office and just having at least the basics of a family office solution in place, meaning the right types of service providers all talking to each other and looking at tax efficient investment strategies, next generation planning, getting things in place. If you wait until you're 20, 30, 50 million net worth, you've probably missed some chances to structure things in the most optimal tax efficient ways because it's easier to transfer wealth before something becomes worth tens of millions of dollars. And so it's better to start early rather than wait because you're also going to move up a learning curve and not know who to trust or what to do or where to continue learning. And if you move up that learning curve before you need it, it's probably going to move you up the net worth learning curve faster. And then you can make mistakes when they're less expensive. If you trust the wrong person when you're worth 100 million, it could be much more painful what could happen versus if you trust them at 20 million or 15 million in net worth.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. I know you wrote a book called Millionaires, and I read it, and it was very good. But so there are a lot of families as well that have, over $100 million. And how is that different if somebody's got 10 million versus 100 million or more?
Sure. Yeah. So if you have 100 million or more, you probably care less about income as a percentage of your portfolio. My experience with $10 million net worth investors is that a larger percentage, they want to have income based and they might have a goal of having half a million a year or $1 million a year passive income as a goal for themselves oftentimes. And then you can reach that goal and have 7 figures of passive income easily within a $100 million portfolio without income dominating the conversation. Typically, those 100 million net worth families are playing a game of offense that's continually creating more wealth or kicking off EBITDA off of operating business, or they have another exit coming. And so a lot of the conversation at that end is managing trust and estate planning, and then the different sleeves of their investments that are outside of where they're creating that wealth, and just putting the money to work fast enough with people they trust is a lot of where they're spending their time.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting to see how, investor profile changes as your wealth goes up and different things that are important to you as well. And you touched on this before, and I love what you shared about the values that you teach your kids and really posting them up and putting them up and talking about them and everything, and maybe involving your kids in that process. But what are some other things? And this is something that's passionate to me. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and it's just I think about this. How do I prepare her be able to handle wealth and handle money? So what are some other things that wealthy families do to prepare their kids to kind of manage this wealth, or at least to be comfortable with it?
Sure. One thing I do is I bring my daughters to business events with me. Like if I'm speaking at an event, I'll bring them and have them sit in the audience and walk them around at the conference, and they'll listen to some of the talks, and I'll let them relax and bring their coloring book or bring some homework or whatever during part of it. I don't expect them to pay attention and like take notes the whole time or anything, but I'll do that as one thing. I talk to them about cryptocurrency. I talk to them about real estate deals. I talk to them about why we bought a property in Park City recently, or a deal we're doing with Dennis. and explain some of the contract stuff to them a little bit on a high level. And, I go too deep into detail and they stop listening too closely, but I share a good amount with them. I'll sometimes bring them to a meeting or two and have them sit in on the meeting and kind of listen as well. My dad did that growing up. And then I tell them a lot of stories about things we did when we started the business, or, like one time in Florida, they said they wanted to buy an electric car. And I said, okay, well, why don't you buy it for yourself? Because it was about $150. So we set up a lemonade stand, and my wife and then wanted to set it up at the end of our driveway on this residential street. And the worst investment I ever made was in an ice cream shop that was in a bad location in a very popular mall, but it was in a bad location in the mall. So I told them, like, no, that's horrible foot traffic. So let's go to the local Starbucks and put it right in front of Starbucks. And then we'll put out our sign. And then we had one of my three daughters working the cash register. One would like call out to people as they walked by on the other side of the street and ask them to come over. And then one of them would be pouring the lemonade and handing them the little baggies of grapes and stuff. And they were able to bring in usually about $50 a day running that lemonade stand for 2 or 3 hours. And then they bought their own car with it, their own electric car, a little toy car with it that they could ride in together. And so I think doing stuff like that is really important. So I plan on buying my kids a small business, like maybe a chain of like 3 vending machine locations, and they go and stock the machine and decide on the pricing and keep the math on if they're making money, then that would be their allowance, is kind of running their own little tiny business.
Yeah.
So there's some ideas that that I've thought of that I think would be kind of fun to do with them, and they like it. They have a good time doing all that stuff.
How old are your girls?
9, 7, and 5.
975. I love that you're doing it when they're young. I just did a video on this recently on YouTube about how to teach your kids and really tying, don't just give an allowance, like maybe tie it to work, or have them just understand what value is. And when you actually can, here's some extra things you can do to generate some money. And I had a vision in California where they charge 5 cents per can when you buy a can of soda. And so, but they used to have these places you could go and you feed the cans in one at a time by hand. But I guess in LA, all the homeless people started fighting around them, so they pulled them all away. So my thought was to have her go be able to do that. We go do it together, but now we just take them in together and she'll help load them up. So I try to involve her in that process. But
Cool.
I think it's great that you're doing that. And I have a friend who also is pretty wealthy, and he ended up buying each of his 4 kids a single family rental house when they were like teenagers, and basically, okay, you're gonna kind of manage this. You'll have property management, but you're gonna kind of like take care of things, or just kind of pull them in the business, which is great. And so you're bringing your kids to events. So I think that's great.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I even think too, you can actually bribe your kids. You can bribe them to, hey, if we go do this, we'll also, you come to a conference for a couple of days, we'll go to the theme park, or we'll do something fun, or
my kids are really young, so we have these. Let me grab one for you real quick.
Sure. Well, he's getting that. Yeah, I love talking about with
we
kids.
have these fun tickets they earn because they're young enough that they care about this type of thing. But there's like these little yellow smiley face tickets.
Okay.
And they get one when they do something good, like get a good grade on a test, or if they get in trouble, they lose a couple of fun tickets, and they can come in here in my office and pick a toy off the shelf by cashing in some fun tickets, like a Chuck E. Cheese, prize shelf or something. And so that's our form of currency in the house, our fun tickets. And I took that from Joe Polish, because he said, whoever said money can't buy happiness is like, I can go and have a great time spending some money going to Hawaii and stuff. Like, money's not the most important thing. No one ever claimed that, but I can for sure do some fun stuff with money. And I've been poor and I've been rich, and I'd rather have money than not. So he calls money fun tickets. And so that's where I came up with the idea for the kids to have like fun tickets they can cash in,
Yeah, well, I think it's really important. I think it's great that you do that because at the end of the day, a lot of people that are, it's kind of the rich dad, poor dad idea, right? The poor dad, Robert Kiyosaki's Poor Dad from the book, didn't really teach him this stuff, and kind of gave him, just go get a great job and do all this, and didn't really teach him about money. The school didn't teach him about money, and then his wealthy dad, did. But I think even a lot of times, if somebody who is wealthy, we're just busy, we're just thinking about other things, and it's something that kind of gets left. Oh, I hope my kid will figure it out, whatever. But it's stuff that you're doing is really helping to prepare your kids for that. So I think that's well done on that. So let's shift gears here for a minute. So talk a little bit more about kind of your business and your group. I know you offer investments, to your group. And what are some of the, obviously we're not pitching any investment, but just what are some of the things that you work with in relation to investing?
Yeah, sure. So Family Office Club has two sides. We have people that are raising capital, and we have 1,000 of those as members in the Family Office Club. And then we have investors. We have 3,000 registered investors in the Family Office Club. That just means people that come to our conferences, come to our webinars, et cetera. Of those 3,000 investors, we have 575 of those that are signed under contract, investor clients of ours. And they're either a client at investorclub.com or doctorsinvestorclub.com. And we put their money to work into passive investments such as cash flowing real estate. It could be real estate development sometimes. But besides real estate, we really like healthcare investments above other industries. And we like dental clinics more than anything else. We like medical practices second, and then healthcare companies would be a third priority. But we recently invested, for example, in a dental clinic that's only a dental group that's 5 years old. And they had 5 locations doing 14 million a year in revenue. I invested with one of my healthcare investors, a doctor, and opened up their 6th location with them. And now they're doing about $2.1 million a month in revenue about 9 months later. So they're growing nicely. So that's an example. I've done about 7 healthcare, like medical, dentist, healthcare investments in 2021. And we closed on about 250 million of investment commitments last year across several dozen deals. And we'll do small deals, not all large, but a couple large ones per year typically. And then the other thing to note that's different about us is that we like to see where someone created their wealth. And we always encourage entrepreneurs to create a lot of wealth in one industry to look at that skill set, their distribution access, their special abilities, and that industry. And they might want to play defense in many areas, but maybe play offense in that area that they know best, obviously. And so an investor might come to us and tell us they made their money in fintech or made their money in manufacturing. And we might love real estate and love healthcare, but out of the 6,000 people that come to our live events in person and the 45,000 people a year my team talks to, we source deals in all industries. So when we have a fintech deal, then we might bring it to our fintech family because they can add special expertise, not just money, to that deal. And that's important because a lot of investment groups out there really focus on one vertical. And we always teach the most important thing is to focus on what makes your family unique and where you're able to play enough offense to actually create your wealth in the first place. We don't try to just shove everything, like we don't only do self-storage and then try to fit that into everyone's portfolio. I don't think that really serves people as well as kind of listening to who they are at the core.
Yeah, that's really great that you specialize for, obviously, it comes back to values, what they value, and also what people know. Right? People know a certain industry, it gives them some competitive advantage in that area, which is great. Yeah, you mentioned earlier before we started recording that you do over 16 live events per year. Can you talk a little bit about what individuals and families get by going to these events? Do they meet other people that are, family offices, as well as people that are doing deals and offering deals? I'd love to know kind of what the benefit you see of maybe somebody who has not been to one of your live events, what they would get out of that.
Yeah, sure. So on the capital raising side, if someone's raising capital, they could become a charter member. And then by coming, they can talk to peers, meet people that might help them with raising their capital as a consultant, et cetera. But then on stage at our investor summits, they would be able to hear from 20 to 55 investors in one day on stage, hearing what they're investing in, what their mandates are, what they don't like in the market, what they think is missing, what everyone messes up when they pitch them deals, what they wish everybody did. Like they wish everybody had a 3-minute video from the founder on their one pager. And first of all, they wish everyone had a one pager on their deal and not just a 44-page pitch deck that's too long. But having a one pager on what they're, a short video on what they're offering, and almost nobody has that. But everyone would like that. And so that's one insight you'd get from our events. Another insight for someone raising capital would be that the structure of the deal matters just as much as the strategy. If your deal is structured like everyone else's, then it's just plain vanilla and it's not sweating for you and like working for you to help close the deal with the investor. But if your structure is superior because you're more aligned, or it's more performance fee based, or something about it removes some risk or adds security to the deal, or upside, et cetera, then the structure could be a real selling point in what you're doing. And not enough people focus on structure. They're obsessed with strategy or just the flat return amount, but not protecting the investor the right way through the deal, perhaps. So That's an example of insights that would come from someone who's raising capital. On the investor side, if you're looking to start a family office, formalize your family office, get better deals originated, and innovate on your strategies and be aware of other niches you could invest in, like hard money lending, or a niche within like the healthcare space, or using gross revenue royalties while structuring an investment into an operating business so you get your money off the table faster and remove some of the risk from the deal. Those are examples of insights you would get from coming as an investor. And a lot of people just enjoy meeting their peers to share notes on like, hey, well, who are you using for accounting, or who are you using to do this or that? And one theme that's common among the ultra wealthy is that they like to see deals first. They like to see deals exclusively. They also like to get a better valuation on the deal than anyone else is getting if they're adding strategic value. And if you position yourself right as an investor, then you can see deals first exclusively and at a better valuation. And if you don't, and you just wander around and you're not clear on who you are as an investor, no one's going to show you a deal first. And so the same goes on when you're raising capital. If you can't say what you're doing in one sentence of why you're relevant on planet Earth to a busy investor, then they're just going to move on. And if you're an investor and you can't say really clearly what you're looking for, then no one's going to show you that manufacturing or that dental deal first, because they're going to not think of you first as being hyper specialized. And so those are some of the insights that come out of running the 150 events we've hosted over the last 14 years. But I don't want to get bored going to my own events. I have to go to every single one. So far, I haven't gotten sick enough to miss one. So I don't want to be bored there. So we try to keep the learning always going and try to keep it interesting for everyone,
Yeah, well, you're in a unique spot because you get to see really the needs of both sides. And in a way, you kind of get to be a matchmaker or kind of watch this happening, right? Where people, that is capital from, the goals and the objectives of the family offices is trying to find the right type of deal. And so you see what syndicators do, what they're doing wrong, or what, things that, you just see the plus and minuses. And so very quickly, it gives you some great insight, which I've appreciated. You've given me some good insight as well. So I've appreciated that.
Sure.
But talk to us a little bit about, I know you're doing all, the events, you've got a lot of things you're doing. What are you working on right now? Is there anything new that you're working on, or anything that you're working on now?
Yeah, something new is that we just bought billionaires.com. So we are interviewing 30 billionaires, and we're going to call the resource that we put out Billionaire Strategies, 100 Insights from 30 Winners in the Game of Capitalism. So if you have a billionaire listener to this podcast and you don't hide under a rock your whole life and you want to shine a light on your foundation or an operating business you have, or a favorite client or investment you've made, we're just looking for 10 minutes of time over email to interview another 25 billionaires or so. We've got some in the works already. And then we're really growing our medical practice, dental practice, investment division, working with 140 doctors under contract right now as investors. And then we've made 2 investments in the medical practices this year and acquired a couple other healthcare assets. So the dentist doctor niche is what's growing the fastest in terms of percentage of our time and energy, which I know you have connections to with your backgrounds. We should keep in touch on that side.
Yeah, no, I'd be interested to learn more. That's one space I haven't really invested in personally or haven't been involved with, but I'd love to be more involved with that. So awesome. So what's a good way for people to connect with you and the Family Office Club?
Sure. The best way is to go to familyoffices.com to check out what we're all about. If you listen to this before December 13th, 2021, we're going to have 650 people and at our annual event, and we're going to have 57 speakers on stage during that one-day event. And we'd love for you to check that out. It's called the Family Office Super Summit. And if anyone has questions, just shoot me an email at richard@familyoffices.com, because if you're an investor, it's free to come to any of our events. So don't go to the website and pay us money. If you're an investor, you can just chat with me and we'll get you signed up for that event, or just see how we could be helpful to you.
Awesome. Richard, I just wanted to honor you for coming on the show today, and just all the value you're adding to so many people. You really give a lot of stuff away for free on your podcast, on your books, and all the different ways you add value to people. So thank you for all that, and also really being in the center for family offices, and also trying to just get people to where they want to go. So thank you for that. Appreciate you coming on today, and hopefully we'll get you on the show again in the near future.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we have a single family office summit in Q1 that I know the December one might not work out with your schedule, but hopefully we'll see you there at one of our Q1 events in person to meet face to face.
I look forward to it. That'll be great. Thanks. So I have a lot of respect for Richard. He is, like I said, in a very unique spot where he sees these wealthy families that are, have a lot of money to invest, and also want to make sure that the family values are in place for the next generations. There's a lot of moving parts there. There's a lot of things that, whether you're ultra wealthy or not, the idea of having written values up for your kids, that's huge, right? And getting your kids involved in your business, bringing them to events, getting them involved in, a lemonade stand or other things, they can understand they have the ability to actually make money. So I did a YouTube video about this recently, so you can also check that out. But it's something that's near and dear to my heart. I know for a lot of people that are wealthy, they think about, how do I not let the money impact my kids negatively? How do I prepare my kids to be successful? So I see that as being really, really important. There was another takeaway from it as well. It's just basically really making sure that you are preparing yourself for the future, right? So if you're anticipating becoming very wealthy, I know a lot of people are either already very wealthy, $5 to $10 million net worth or more, or you anticipate yourself being there. The planning is really, really important. And like you said, you don't want to be out $100 million and all of a sudden just start doing this and make a bunch of mistakes. Then you can kind of learn along the way and start getting things in place for things like legacy and tax planning and different investment goals. And it just gives you more resources to be able to take advantage of in that way. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.
You've been listening to the Mailbox Money Podcast. For more free resources, articles, and videos, go to bronsonequity.com. There you can download your copy of the special report, The Single Best Investment Strategy During and After a Pandemic. None of the information shared here is an offer to buy a specific investment, and this is for educational purposes only. Consult your financial, legal, and tax professionals and use your own common sense before making any investment decisions. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time for more Mailbox Money.